In this video, I want to break down my experience using two of the hottest AI development tools environments, and that is Lovable and Replit, or Replit. I interchange between the two. I've had the pleasure of building two apps with it, one on this channel and one over on my Webflow channel, and I feel like I've got a good idea about the capabilities of both and the shortcomings of those. And I want to also compare it to using a code development tool like Cursor and why you would use one or the other, so stick around. So the first tool I used was Replit. That was my introduction to these AI development environments. And when I say environments, I mean that it takes care of hosting. It's an AI agent that really walks you through the process of building an application using prompts. Quite overwhelming, the UI at first, because there's so much going on, but you'll really see the benefit of that as we get into comparing the tool. I set myself the challenge of rebuilding an app that's live right now. You can go and subscribe to it. It's called Journaling for Clarity, whereby it's a gratitude journal in a nutshell. And I wanted to see how easy that was, or at least to get it kickstarted inside of Replit, and I was then able to publish it, and it worked just as I expected to. It didn't go all the way, but it got enough to sort of see its capabilities and understand where its shortcomings are. Lovable, over on my Webflow channel, I sort of built a CMS platform where there's just a website on the front end and a user can log in and publish blogs and various things like that. It's a fairly simple website. It really only took half an hour to do, whereas the app side of things for Journaling for Clarity over on Replit, that was a slightly more involved process to actually build. But again, it was enough for me to get an insight into the workflow and the capabilities of Lovable. So, the comparisons of the two. First of all, Lovable is a far better UI, I think, or a far more pleasing UI to stare at than Replit. Replit is very technical, just not as friendly as a tool. Lovable is also much simpler than Replit, and you heard me earlier say about all the different windows and the overwhelming nature of Replit. Lovable really takes a backseat and allows the prompting just to be front and center, but I do think that's to its detriment. Unless the AI is going to be fantastic, it really is to its detriment, particularly around debugging. I was constantly just, not only is the AI not really guiding me through the process of, say, setting up an authentication system on Firebase, I think that's more to do with the AI rather than the UI. Being able to inspect the logs, the console, and things like that, which you're able to do over on Replit to help you debug the issue, that's just all missing. If they get the AI better and you suddenly don't start to need those consoles and network traffic and things like that, then maybe it starts to be that simplicity really starts to shine. But I really appreciated just being able to dig in, debug the code. I suppose it's worth mentioning the AI itself, and both of them seemed fairly equal in their capabilities. Able to understand what it is that I'm saying. The output, I feel like, from Lovable was far more pleasing than Replit. However, again, I used Lovable after I used Replit, so it could just be that my prompting skills were slightly better, or my request was slightly easier to sort of reference because I was building an original app inside of Replit, but I was building something that's been done a billion times before inside of Lovable. But it did feel like the output of the AI was a lot more pleasing to look at. It was using Tailwind, whereas Replit was using ShadCN. But again, you can just prompt to change these things. So it's really difficult to say which one is the better AI. The only thing worth noting is, as I say, the debugging aspect of Replit was by far and away better in the chat window. Even before all of the consoles and the logs and in the chat window, it was able to really inspect and say, there's an error with this, I've detected an error with this is what I'm going to try. It really guides me, and if it needs my input, it will ask me for that input. Whereas I felt like Lovable would just kind of hang and you wouldn't really know what was going on, and then it would kind of fix itself, but I'm typing in the prompt window and it left me a little bit confused. So that's from an AI perspective. And also with Lovable, it has Supabase built in, or I say built in, it's sort of almost like a recommended service. However, in my blogging platform, in my prompt, it wanted me to use Firebase, which you'd think anything around authentication, databases, or anything like that, it would automatically just use Supabase. So once again, it's just maybe that's a sign that the AI isn't quite as clever as we want it to be. Also with Replit as well, you get access to environment variables. It's just a lot more of a robust solution for building out and just staying in that tool and just building your app completely within the Replit ecosystem, including the publication of the website. Lovable has publication, but I couldn't find where environment variables should live. It recommends they should be in Supabase, so I then had to move my website over to Supabase, which didn't quite work. So again, just a little bit more of a clunky experience, in part due to its simplicity. So with both platforms as well, they enable you to sync with GitHub. And I think this is a really cool feature. And for me personally, is something that is essential when it comes to any AI creation software. You don't want it to be this black box where everything it does is kind of just only stored on that server or that service or whatever. Being able to synchronize with GitHub, then download the tool and use something like Cursor to kind of drill in a little bit deeper into the code that's been written, resync that and all the rest of it and have that reflected on is a really key feature. I'm so glad they both have that. However, working in the code editor of Replit, again, I found I was able to easily just manually code things inside of that editor. Again, with Replit, it really abstracts you, and I think that's the key word with Lovable in general, is the abstraction. It keeps that away from you. I tried putting in a API key or something, it didn't let me. Maybe there was something in a reasoning for that, but again, it just lent into this idea of abstraction to try and create a less complicated experience. So before I get into my summary of the two, let's talk about why you wouldn't use Cursor. And really it comes down to the all-in-one platform. Because Replit is let's call it a sandbox environment, it's running the tool, it's hosting the tool, the agent is actually able to run the code and then debug it and then fix errors and figure out how to solve problems. And the same with Lovable, albeit a slightly more clunky experience. Cursor for me is more of, I'm trying to think of an analogy in that you're able to kind of drill down and really get finessed with the code, which is why that GitHub synchronization is great. You can pull down the code and then change individual files and be really, really specific with the changes that you want to make. You have to be more specific. You will say you want to change specific files, you want to do this specific thing, you want to interrogate this specific bit of code. It just feels a lot more nuanced, which I personally welcome, but having this all-in-one solution, the agent is able to work with you as opposed to in Cursor where you're the one telling the agent, telling the AI what it needs to do, and it's kind of filling in those sorts of blanks. So I welcome them all. They do serve a different place, but I couldn't get the same result inside a Cursor, let's say, as a blank canvas, just starting off with a prompt, like you can in Replit or Lovable inside of Cursor. Really, it needs the existing code base to work its best. So to summarize, I think because the UI is nicer inside of Lovable, it's simplistic in its presentation, and you're building a fairly simple tool or website or something like that, then Lovable is a great way to go, because I feel like you're not going to be overwhelmed with stuff. You're just going to get your output, particularly if it's just a website, and really see the benefit of just prompt-based coding. I think that's a term I should add at the beginning of the episode, and get a result and just be really satisfied with that result. However, something more complex, you're going to miss out on the ability to debug if you're comfortable with that sort of stuff. And you're probably going to get frustrated with it because it's not working as you would expect. I was faced with white canvas and I had to inspect the network traffic and the console inside of the live website itself in order to be able to fix the issues that I was having. Replit seems like by far and away a more capable system, and if you're an advanced user or you're an advanced coder, you're really able to get the best out of Replit, because all of the toggles and dials and windows just all will make sense to you or at least they're just not as, you're not taken back by it. And something I mentioned in both my videos is basically, if you are a coder, if you are familiar with the process of building applications, you're really going to get the most out of these tools, because you're going to approach it with a mindset of how these different pieces fit together, rather than someone who is, for lack of a better word, just being lazy and just wanting AI to create something for you. Those types of people are probably not willing to work at really the complexity of what it is it's trying to do, what it's trying to build. They won't have the patience to really have everything mapped out in their mind and approach it in a modular way. So I do feel like if you are going to be lazy with it, which we're all lazy, there's no shame in that, but if you're going to approach it with a lazy mentality, then you're probably going to get frustrated with it, because they still take a little bit of work. They still take a bit of debugging and patience and all the rest of it. So both great tools. I'm personally going to use Replit. I'll leave links to both of them down in the description to try out. I do recommend you try them both out, and I will continue using Cursor with existing code bases, even pulling down some of my Replit projects and using them in Cursor just to get that granular control. So I hope this was helpful from a developer's perspective, using these tools quite extensively. I'm going to continue to develop, and I'm going to continue to share my understanding and my progress along the way on this channel. So like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.